Hi guys, in this video I'm going to try to introduce what are args and kwargs in a very simple way. We will begin with some Python examples and then we will take a look at a very short and easy example in Django. So without further ado, let's get started. Alright guys, so the first thing that we need to know is that args stand for arguments while kwargs stand for keyword arguments. And those stars that you see at the front, these asterisks over here, these are the unpacking operators. And before we move any further, I would like to show you a very simple example to give you an idea how this actually works. So I'm going to create a very simple function, and I'm going to call it my function, and this function takes in args and keyword args. All right, so what I'm going to do over here is to print as a string args, and then I also want to see the type of args, and I would love to see the args themselves. All right, and then I'm just going to copy this, paste it below, and over here we will have not args but kwargs, the type of kwargs, and the kwargs themselves. And right now we can call this function. So I'm going to execute it over here. First, I'm going to pass in arguments. So maybe let's pass in 1, 2, 3, and maybe cyberpunk, something like this. And then I'm going to take care of the keyword arguments. So here I'm just going to set the TV show like this. And I'm going to assign to it How I Met Your Mother, and then I'll do the same for the sport, and here I'm just going to type football. All right, so now I'm going to run this function, and here are the results. So in case of args, we are dealing with a tuple, and here are our arguments. These arguments are put in a tuple, and then if we take a look at the keyword arguments, we have a dictionary. And those keyword arguments are put in a dictionary. So what we can take out of this is the fact that both args and kwargs are collectors. So once we write args and kwargs, once we create a function that takes in args and kwargs, we can pass in as many arguments and keyword arguments that we actually want. And these arguments and keyword arguments will be collected in a tuple and in a dictionary. Okay, this is extremely important. All right, but why do we have the stars? Okay, so we have one star over here for args and 2 stars, 2 asterisks for kwargs, before kwargs. So as mentioned before, these are unpacking operators. We unpack with a single asterisk the tuple, and we unpack with 2 asterisks a dictionary. And let's take a look how this actually works. So what I'm going to do is to copy this line of code, put it below. I'm going to get rid of this content over here. And right now I want to compare args and args with this unpacking operator. And I'm going to run this function again. And here are the results. So we have a tuple, and below we have those arguments unpacked. All right, and unfortunately we can't do the same thing for keyword arguments because we would have an error. However, we can run a little bit reversed example in order to give you a little bit better understanding on how this actually works. So what I'm going to do is to create below a dictionary, and I'm going to call it my data. And here what I'm going to do is to grab this TV show. This is going to be the first key in my dictionary. And then I'm going to assign to this key How I Met Your Mother. All right. And then I'm going to add the second key, and this is going to be sport. And I'm going to assign to it football. All right. Below, I'm going to create a function, and I'm going to call it my function 2. And this function will take in precisely a TV show and sport. And here I'm just going to print the TV show, and I'm going to print the sport. All right, so now I can actually call this function, and I can do it in a few ways. So let's take a look at the first example. Right now I can pass in arguments, TV show and sport. So I can grab How I Met Your Mother, and I can also grab football. Let's run this function, and here are the results, okay? But I can also do it with keyword arguments. So let's grab TV show, and let's put it in front of How I Met Your Mother, and now we have TV show is equal How I Met Your Mother, and let's grab the sports, and sport is equal to football. Okay, so right now I have keyword arguments over here, and when I run this function, there should be no errors, and the results are exactly the same. But then if I would like to pass in my data, I would get an error. And this is a type error, my function 2 missing one required positional argument sport. So basically my data is treated somehow as the TV show. Okay, this is treated as the first positional argument, and we are missing sport. So what we can do is to unpack it with the double asterisk, with this unpacking operator for dictionaries, because my data is a dictionary. And then what happens is that there is no error. And why is that? Well, basically, if we take a look at my data, for simplicity purposes, I'm just going to write a comment over here that once we unpack this my data inside of my function, what will happen is that this key TV show will be taken outside of the dictionary, and it will look something like this. TV show is equal to How I Met Your Mother, and the sport will look like this. Okay? This is, I think, the simplest example that I can provide. So we already know that this will work because we ran it before. So if we replace my data with TV show is equal How I Met Your Mother, and sport is equal to football, this should become obvious. This should run, okay? This should work. So I'm just going to press play, and there it is, okay? So hopefully this is understandable. This is no longer a secret. And maybe let's do some more examples before we jump into Django. So what I want to present next is how to loop through arguments and keyword arguments. So I'm just going to create another function that is going to be called numbers, or maybe my numbers. And this function will take in arguments. And what I'm going to do over here is to initialize the sum to 0. And then I'm going to create a for loop for argument in args. What we want to do is to check if this argument, this single argument, is an integer. So we need to write an if statement over here. So if is instance, and then we need to pass in the argument, and we want to check if this argument is an integer, and then we want to increase the value of sum by the value of this argument. So sum plus equal arg. All right, and then at the end, let's return, or maybe let's print the sum. Okay, so right now what I'm going to do is to call this function my numbers, and I'm going to pass 1, 2, 3, and maybe 5 and 11. Okay, so 11 isn't an integer, so we should see 3, 3, 5, 11. We should see the result 11, but not 22. So maybe I'm just going to change this to 12 to avoid the confusion. The output should be 11, and this 12 shouldn't be taken into account. So let's run the code, and there is the result. We have 11, okay? So we summed up our arguments. This is a very simple example, but before we jump into Django, I want to show you another one with keyword arguments. So what I'm going to do is to create another function maybe I'm just going to call it my profile function, and this will take in keyword arguments this time. And we can loop through dictionaries, because basically we know that kwargs is a dictionary with the use of key value and then dictionary items. So let's take a look how this will work. For key value in kwargs items, and then what I'm going to do over here is just to print the key, then I'm going to print the value, and I'm also going to print a separator. All right, so what I'm going to do next is to simply call this function my profile function, and we need to pass in some keyword arguments. So I'm just going to grab these two and put them over here, and then I'm also going to add maybe the third one, game is equal to cyberpunk, and then I'm going to execute this code, and here are the results. So we have TV show How I Met Your Mother, then we have sport football, and game, it should be game like this, and game is cyberpunk. All right, so right now we are ready to move to Django. However, I would like to make a short summary. Both args and kwargs are collectors. Args are tuples, while kwargs are dictionaries. And we use these unpacking operators, a single star or double star, in order to unpack the args as a tuple and kwargs as a dictionary, so that if we call a function, our function will understand what are the arguments and keyword arguments. This is basically it. And then it's very important to also keep in mind, if we don't know how many arguments and keyword arguments we want to pass to the function, to use both args and keyword args. And I'm going to show you a very simple example. I'm going to create a function, let's call it hello world, and I'm just going to leave it empty and print hello world. Okay, but then if I decide to call this hello world and I want to pass in some arguments, let's execute the code, and we have an error. We have a type error. Hello world takes 0 positional arguments, but 2 were given. All right, and we can fix this very easily adding args over here. And let's run the code. And as you can see, there were no problems this time. We have hello world. However, if we would add here TV show, and let's set it to How I Met Your Mother, let's run this code. And if we move a little bit to the top, here is the error. So we have hello world TV show How I Met Your Mother, type error, hello world got unexpected keyword argument TV show. So we can fix this by adding kwargs. Okay, and again we can print args, and kwargs. So let's take a look at this right now. And there we have it. Hello world, we have our arguments, and we have keyword arguments, and most important, we get no errors. So right now I opened a Django project that is available here on the channel. So far 3 parts were published, and the 4th one will be published this week. This is a quiz project. So we have right now a main page where we can see all the quizzes that are available. Right now we've added 2. So we have simple math and test. And then once we click on a particular quiz, we will see some details regarding this quiz. So here we have difficulty, easy, number of questions 3, what is the score to pass, and what is the time to take this quiz. So now if I press yes, I will be taken to the quiz page, and this detail page is determined by the primary key. And this is very, very important, because right now we can move to Django, and here is our quiz list view, and here is our quiz view. This is our detail page. So right now we can get the primary key by writing kwargs, okay, unpacked kwargs, and we can get the primary key by writing pk is equal to kwargs.get pk, because if we take a look at the URLs py, here we have a path which expects a primary key. All right, so we can go to the views again, and we can write pk is equal to kwargs.get pk, or we can simply delete it and pass in primary key directly like over here. All right, and this will also work. Let's refresh the page, and there are no errors. Okay, so this is the very simple example and very commonly used in Django. So yeah, I think we can finish off over here, and we will see each other in the next one. Take care and bye-bye.